Awesome. The technology works when I get around to it. Welcome back to another thrilling installment of Fraggoth Reads. I'm Fraggoth, and today we're reading more of Cyteen by the inestimable C.J. Cherryh. Let's see. Well, either very, very much a lot happened last time, or practically nothing happened last time, depending on your perspective. Very short amount of things occurred, but there is a lot of detail exposure that we've received, which the beginning of this book is very overwhelming. Like, it throws you in on the deep end, and it's like, you're either going to sink or you're going to swim, depending on how patient you are. And if you're patient, this book pays dividends in terms of the depth of what's going on. There's a lot of fun to be had here. I am flipping through here to see... Oh, jeez. Where does this chapter end, bro? Brody, where does the chapter end, brah? I don't know. 50 pages in, it's still going. So I'm not going to be able to get through all that because it is fairly densely packed text. Okay, so I would have to get through 60 pages, give or take. Actually, a little more. To get through the chapter. So we're going to split that in half. Because these are pretty long as it is. Let's do that, yeah. Today's will be a little bit longer. Alright, so we've been introduced to some of our core cast. Interestingly, one of the perspective characters we had last week is not really one of the main protagonists, or highly relevant persons. Mikhail Corain is relevant, but he's not really one of our protags. You'll see why later. Mostly we're going, and starting today, we're going to be following Ariane Emery, who is, she's a special person with a capital S and a capital P, and that stands for pool. She is, which is a state-sanctioned genius national treasure. She is the direct descendant of, and was involved in some of the direct formation of Union as an entity. A governmental entity governing over not just a planet, but a swath of planets that Union has incorporated into itself. She's also the head of something called Rezun. We're not quite sure what that means yet. We have not really been introduced to what Rezun, spelled R-E-S-E-U-N-E, Rezun. I may be... Yeah, R-E-S-E-U-N-E. I may be mispronouncing that, and if so, I apologize. We're going to learn more about that pretty soon. We've been introduced to one Jordan Warwick as well, and there's some political machinations surrounding him and an upcoming or now occurring vote, or has occurred vote, about appropriations and how certain money, what projects money is going to be spent on. And he is also not really one of our main characters. Ariane Emery definitely is. We are going to be introduced to someone, I think, this week, who is going to be one of our other main... Yeah, we are. Our other main protagonists. And he's... we're going... Yeah, definitely, for sure, this week. And it's really two dueling protagonists, but the status quo is going to change pretty soon. I don't think it's going to change this week or next week, but it is going to be within the month. It is going to take us a while to get through this book. It's denser than I remembered, and it was dense. I remembered it as being dense before, so it's going to take us a while to get through this puppy. But I'm trying to think of salient details I can give without spoiling things. So I'm not going to. I'm just going to call it good, and we'll just keep on rocking and rolling. How about that? As of, I guess, 2-3 days ago, I have updated the playlists. So all of Distress is now in its own playlist. I had some other salient bit of information, but I can't remember what it is. Must not have been that important. Anyway, Ariane Emery also has a lot of political power, not just because she's head of Rezun, although that also because of that. Oh, right, that's the other thing. Because I love you all, I did find a digital copy of Cyteen that has the maps, so I extracted the map images, as well as an extra image, which I believe, yeah, it's that one. That is representative of the cover of my copy that I have, my physical copy. To anyone wondering, yes, typically I'm going to read from a physical copy. Anyone new to the stream, I should say. Typically I'm going to be reading from a physical copy of a book that I own myself. Oh, I should have gotten the cover page, because I like the font they use, or the, not the cover page, but the the title page, because I love the font they use on that one, in this edition. But anyway, when we roll back to the map, it gives you a fair idea of this is how Cyteen is laid out. Things to note about Cyteen, the planet. It is an alien ecology. It is not like ours. There's stuff that looks familiar but does not play nice with our biology. There is a terraforming project underway that moves at different paces at different points in time. Right now, things are, I think, at largely a bit of a standstill, just kind of maintaining what exists, what infrastructure exists, and making sure that remains solid. We've been hearing a lot about something called tape. We've heard about this before in Down Below Station. We've heard about it a bit in 40,000 in Gehenna. From Gehenna? Of Gehenna? In Gehenna. I'm pretty sure. I always get the title of that book wrong. As well as the Azzy. We got formally introduced to the Azzy in 40,000 in Gehenna. The concept of this bred, purpose-bred race of humans, generally for menial labor, but not always. We are going to learn a lot more about the Azzy and their standing in Union society. Tape, though, is going to be kind of the big technological idea we're going to be dealing with here, the ramifications thereof. But at the same time, not really, in the classic C.J. Cherryh sense. Classic C.J. Cherryh here, where it's like, well, yeah, there's fancy technology in this sci-fi novel, but it really isn't the focus. It is part of the background. It is, here's a society that does run on this. The people making it, therefore, would probably be important, would they not? This educational aid that allows for anyone to learn anything rather quickly. And in the last week, we kind of got the established reason why it's so many people would be using this technology to, like, sleep learn things. Just learn stuff while you're sleeping. Or just learn in detail new advancements in a field over the course of a couple hours, as opposed to months, as opposed to years. It's because the competition is using it. And other people in your society are, and in order to keep up, you're kind of going to have to. So everyone, basically everyone uses it, except for a small minority. Noteworthy, however, is that the folks in the Merchanter Alliance really don't. We're not really going to get their perspective in this particular book. We've already kind of gotten that in some of the previous novels. But it's... Union is different. Union is different, but this book largely seeks to show how they are still people. It's very easy from like a merchant or alliance perspective to think, oh, these people are completely, these guys are out of their minds. They're transhuman as hell. They're way past the recognizability event horizon. But this book humanizes them in a way that kind of makes them even creepier in other ways, and you'll see that when we get there. A lot of it is delivered in a very matter-of-fact way, but looking back, it's like, oh yeah, no, they're pretty alien. They're pretty different, but they're still definitely human in a lot of key ways. Anyway, that's enough yapping out of me. So I get very excited about this particular book. I'm sorry, every day I'm thinking, oh man, I can't wait to read more Cyteen at people. I'm quite fond. There's some stuff that happened, like I'm not gonna defend what certain characters do. I'm not gonna defend Union Society because I think it's really deeply messed up in a lot of ways. But it's fascinating. It's a fascinating book. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Let's get rocking and rolling. It has been me yapping for like 10, 15 minutes, and that's too many. Okay, so we will get moving on with, first of all, another verbal text, and then we'll get started on Chapter 2. We're going to get about halfway through Chapter 2, because it's a behemoth, and I just don't have that kind of time to read the whole thing in one go. But you'll still get a solid hour and a half out of me. I'm busy lately, and I apologize for that. Alrighty, let's get rolling. Verbal text from Patterns of Growth, A Tapestry in Genetics, Number 1, A Rayzune Calendar, 2396. Rayzune Educational Publications, 8970-8768-1, approved for 80+. Batch AL-5766, 4 units. The technician begins a routine procedure at Rayzune, the transfer of genetic material already replicated. 10 units of AL-5766 remain unused in the gene bank, standard operating procedure for commercial and experimental materials. AL-5766 is female, Alpha class. Alpha, the highest intelligence in the A to Z non-citizen classifications, ranges upward from around 150 on the Resner scale to a current known high of 215. AL-5766 is 190, which verges on genius. Alphas are generated only rarely, except for specific executive assignments, experimental studies, or colonial operations in which there is minimum population density and considerable latitude for independent judgment. Alphas without early socialization are prone to personality disorders. The best success in non-social alphas have been achieved with positive feedback in early training and an accelerated early tape study consisting of world awareness, reading, and mathematics skills, with minimal intervention except for reward. The most reliably successful alphas are those given to human parentage from the moment of birth. In such cases, the behavioral and social statistics follow the same profile as citizen-born individuals of equal Resner values.
It should always be remembered that an ASI gene set's traits, and to some extent classification, are determined by the tape designed specifically for that gene set, and that the primary failing with alphas seems to be in tape design. AL-5766 has shown developmental patterns in human parentage situations which are within acceptable ranges, but which indicate a propensity toward aggression. Within ASI communities, the AL-5766 statistics are wholly unacceptable, involving violent behaviors, moodiness, and abnormal and irrational anxieties. AL-5766 disorders, once manifested, find no amelioration through tape, and only rarely find relief through interventive counseling, although some salvage has been effected on 2 occasions by transfer to military situations where hardship and physical challenge is extreme. Neither case, however, has utilized the high potential of the AL-5766s in mathematics, and not even experimental use has been made of the AL-5766 gene set since 2353. Now, however, Rezun believes that it has a tape fix for the problem, of interest since AL-5767 proved out as beta class, lacking the traits which made 5766 both brilliant and troublesome. There are 4 sets in this group because a tape design team has come up with 2 fixes, subtly different. 2 each will provide adequate comparisons for a first run. There is no need of a control using the original tape. AL-5766s have 46 years of data behind them, and no one needs to prove that the old tapes were faulty. The eggs lack a code of their own until they receive the full diploid set of AL-5766. This is standard for ASI and citizen replications. The womb into which each egg goes is bioplasmed and contractile, the whole environment closely duplicating a specific natural pregnancy which has served Rezun for 49 years. It replicates all the movements, the sounds, the chemical states, and the interactive cycles of a living womb. Batch EU-4651, 10 units. The AL-5766 units are a day along, 4 motes of life with identical genetic codes, busily dividing and growing in the dark of the wombs. The EU-4651s, male, have an identical start, and there are the usual 10 units left in the gene bank. EU-4651 is an old type, Eta class, between 90 and 95 on the Resner scale, and outstandingly stable, one of the most successful Etas in industrial and military fields, and not restricted to Cyteen, but patented in all its sets and derivative sets. Ordinarily, Rezun would have simply sold the requisite eggs in whatever number the purchasing lab requested, but this is a new application for the EU-4651s, most of whom are in military service. An EU-4651 has shown an uncommon and late-developing aptitude under an emergency situation, which might mean reclassification and upgrading of the type if a tape program could take advantage of it, either in existing individuals or in future EU-4651s. Batch RYX-20, 20 units. This set is Rho class, Resner 45 and below. Rho is the last of the ASI classes which Rezun deliberately engineers on a commercial basis. Rho class ASI perform very well with positive feedback and minimal intervention, having little inclination to deviate from the program. Their ability to rebound from mishandling and so-called bad tape makes them valuable initial test subjects in any new tape structure, which, along with general labor, will be the usefulness of these 20 ASI in Rezun. Because they are prone to physical strain during their lives, they are, like classes N through Ps, generally not given rejuve, which of course does little to alleviate skeletal damage, but they are given a value structure which provides great satisfaction in continuance of the genotype. Batch Cyteen 1 unit. Cyteen goes directly from processing to cryogenics, flown via company jet to a courier service in Novgorod to make the scheduled shuttle lift on the weekend, weather permitting. Rezun maintains a special service to the general public, whereby it receives certain tax exemptions and utilizes equipment during its slack hours. Cyteen is from a tissue sample of a 7-year-old child who suffered a fatal fall. The release form has advised the mother that there will be no identity transference. The replicate bylaws must have special counseling. The replicate by law must have special counseling, but at the will of the parent, the clone may bear the name and must bear the citizen number of the deceased, being a posthumous replicate of the child. Beloved daughter of Susan X. Actual name and numbers withheld. The embryo will develop in lab, indebted only with the minimal freight charge so tiny a canister requires on a scheduled military transport. In due course, she will be delivered from womb tank into her genetic mother's arms. Batch CIT PR 1 unit. Cloning individuals who want a personal twin instead of a genetically mixed offspring has become a lucrative business for the ordinary lab, since the cost runs upward of 500,000 credits. But Rezun, as a research and development laboratory, has no interest in this practice, sometimes called vanity cloning, except for the rare genotype Rezun finds of commercial or experimental interest. This is such a case, a fetus near term. In fact, Rezun has absorbed all cost on this replication, whose designation is CIT PR. The parent subject is uniquely talented, willing to trade genetic uniqueness for one replicate, and willing to sign a release opening all informational records of applicable interest to Rezun. Rezun will store that data for future development of the gene set, but will not release the gene set for commercial use until 50 years after the decease of parent and replicate. Rezun puts 10 gene sets in storage as A1. So, every time I... That's a... they have an asterisk there. I'm assuming it is redacted. Batch AgCult-789X, 1 unit. AGCULT, AgCult. A day along in a womb tank in a large building somewhat downhill from the last facility is AgCult 789X. AgCult 789X, experimental as the X designation indicates, closely resembles the RYX-20s or the EU 4651s, except that the genetic codes of the RYX-20s and the EU 4651s indicate 2 feet, while that of AgCult 789X indicates 4, and the RYX-20s and the EU 4651s codes indicate smooth skin, while AgCult 789X's indicates a sleek bay hide and a superlative ability to run. AgCult 789X is exceedingly rare material, Terran in origin, another attempt at a species with which Cyteen has had limited success. The AgCult programs, involving not only animal species but also botanical studies, have had far more success with the algae, and with the lower end of a food chain which may one day support the descendants of Terran species. In a much heralded gesture toward peace, Earth has provided Cyteen with gene sets and data on a whole range of Terran species, with particular emphasis on the endangered or extinct, along with human gene sets which may contain genetic information missing from Union and Alliance gene pools. Reciprocally, Union has released representative gene sets of Union populations to Terran genetic archives in an exchange program designed to provide a valuable comparison between the two populations, and to provide a reference in event of global catastrophe or unforeseen lapse in contact. Of the 2 worlds presently supporting human colonies, one, down below, is, of course, a protectorate, and there is no question of changing the environment to any extent that would wipe out the indigenes. Humanity remains a visitor to down below. Cyteen, far less hospitable, harboring no species more advanced than the various platytheres and ankyloderms, was far more suitable for radical terraforming, and Cyteen's ability to store genetic material against irrevocable climatic and atmospheric change at least raises hopes of selective recoveries in specific protected habitats should changes exceed their intended limits. Terraforming, while wreaking havoc on many native species, has provided a unique opportunity to study interface zones and compare adaptive changes in terrene and indigenous species, advancing our understanding of catastrophic changes which have impacted terrene species over geologic time, and of the degree of change facing the human species in its radical changes of habitat. Understanding that genetic changes are inevitable but not always desirable, Earth has begun to look on Cyteen as a repository for genetic information on species threatened with extinction. Some of the more ambitious projects involve large mammal habitat from the bottom of the food chain up. Ironically, the experience in terraforming Cyteen, destructive as it has been of Cyteen's indigenous life, is making possible the recovery of certain threatened ecosystems on Earth, and the establishment of more fragile systems on Mars, fourth planet of Sol system. Certain of the proposed future exchanges are quite ambitious. Earth is particularly anxious for the success of cetaceans and higher primates on Cyteen. It has proposed a joint study program as soon as the cetacean project is viable, for the study of cetacean development and the comparison of whale song on Cyteen and on Earth. Cyteen finds such projects of interest, too, for the future, but the present emphasis in terraforming and recovery is far more concerned with the immediate problems in large-scale atmospheric changes, and the problems of interface zones, high salinity, and trace minerals in Swigert Bay, at the delta of the heavily colonized Novaya Volga, which offers the most favorable conditions for large-scale marine aquaculture. Chapter 2 1. Rezun from the air was a patch of green in the deep valley of the Novaya Volga, a protected low-lying strip stretching yearly longer on the riverside. Yes, okay. One sec. A protected, low-lying strip stretching yearly longer on the riverside, white buildings at the last, and the ag pens, the barracks, the sprawling complex of Rezun proper spread out under the left-side window that was always hers. Ariane Emery latched up her papers, quite on schedule as the gear came down, and Florian appeared beside her seat to take temporary custody of her personal kit. She kept the briefcase. Always. The jet touched down, concrete coming up under the Delta wings. It braked, taxiing to a gentle stop at Rezun Terminal as ground crews swung into action. Personnel transport, baggage crews, cleaning crews, mechanics, a crisp and easy operation from decontamination to docking that matched anything Novgorod could muster. They were all Azi, all staff born to Rezun. Their training went far beyond what Novgorod counted sufficient. But that was true of most Rezun personnel. They were known faces, known types, and everything about them was in the databanks. For the first time in days, Ariane Emery felt herself secure. The security handoff had gone smoothly enough, control passing to Rezun offices the moment the word reached Giraud Nye's office that Rezun 1 had left the ground at Novgorod, with no more than an hour's advance warning. Ari's movements were usually sudden and unscheduled, and she did not always give advance notice even to him, who was ahead of Rezun security, but this was a record suddenness. Advise the staff, he had told Aban, his own bodyguard, who did that, quickly, seeing to the transfer of logs and reports. He called his brother Dennis in administration, and Dennis advised Wing 1 as soon as the plane was on final approach. The last was routine, the standard procedure on Ariane's returns, whenever Rezun 1 came screaming in and Ariane Emery settled into the place that was hers, in her wing, in her residency. The word had come on yesterday's news that Hope Project the Hope Project. The word had come on yesterday's news that the Hope Project had been tabled, and the stock market had reacted with a shock that might well run the length and width of space, although analysts called it a procedural delay. The good news was a tiny piece following, with biographical clip provided from Science Bureau files, that an obscure chemist on Fargon had been afforded special status. That bill, at least, had gone through. And the council had wrapped up in a marathon session that had extended on into the small hours. More ripples in the interstellar stock market, which loathed uncertainties more than it disliked sudden reverses of policy. The news bureaus of every polity and union had held a joint broadcast of commentary and analysis, preempting scheduled morning broadcasts, senior legislative reporters doing their best to offer interpretations, frustrated in the refusal of even opposition councillors to grant interviews. The leader of the abolitionist faction in the centrist coalition had granted one. Ianni Marino, his white hair standing out in its usual disorder, his face redder and his rhetoric even more extreme than ever, he had called for okay, I'm going to try the sentence again, my apologies. This one dances around, as Cherryh is liable to do. The leader of the abolitionist faction in the centrist coalition had granted one. Ianni Marino, his white hair standing out in its usual disorder, his face redder and his rhetoric more extreme than ever, had called for a general vote of confidence of the entire council and threatened secession from the centrist party. He did not have the votes to do the one. He might well do the other, and Gerard Nice had sat listening to that, knowing more than the commentators and still wondering along with the news bureaus just what kind of deal had been struck and why Mikhail Corain had been willing to go along with it. A triumph for Rezun? A political disaster? Something lost? It was not Ariane's habit to consult back during the sessions in Novgorod except in dire emergency, certainly not by phone, not even on bureau lines, but there were staff couriers and planes always available. She had not sent meant a situation under control, despite that that she had not sent meant a situation under control, despite that precipitate adjournment, one hoped. The social schedule had been thrown into utter confusion. The councillors had cancelled meetings right and left, and the councillors from Russell's and Pan Paris had sped back to Cyteen station to make passage on a ship bound for Russell's star, departure imminent. Their secretaries had been left to sit proxy, one presumed, with definite instructions about their votes. It was more than protocol that brought Gerard Nye and his brother Dennis to meet the small bus as it pulled up in the circle drive at the front of Rezun. The bus door opened. The first down was, predictably, the Azzy Catelyn in the black uniform of Rezun security, her face pale and set in a forecast of trouble. She stepped down and reached back to steady Ari as Ari made the single step. Ari in pale blue, carrying her briefcase herself, as usual, and with no visible indication of triumph or catastrophe until she looked straight at Gerard and Dennis with an expression that foretold real trouble. "Your office," she said to Dennis. Behind her, exiting onto the concrete with the rest of the staff, Gerard saw Jordan Warwick, who was not supposed to be with that flight, who had flown out 5 days ago on Rezun 1 and was supposed to come back at the end of the week on a Rezun Air special flight. There was trouble. Warwick arriving in Ari's company was as great a shock as centrists and expansionists suddenly bedding down together. Warwick's staff was not with him. Only his Azzy chief of household, Paul, who followed along with a sober, anxious look, carrying a flight kit. Aban might collect gossip from the staff, the ones who were family and free to talk. That's family with a capital F. We'll learn more about what that means later. Gerard gave Aban the order and fell in with Ari and Dennis. Silent Florian heading off to the left hall the moment they cleared the doors, Catelyn walking along behind with Dennis's Azzy Sealy. Not a word until they were inside Dennis's inmost office, and Dennis turned on the unit that provided sound screening in the room. Then, "We've got a problem," Ari said, opening the briefcase very carefully, very precisely on the expensive imported veneer of Dennis's desk.
Hope's in trouble?
Dennis asked, accepting the fiche she handed him.
Or is it Jordan?
Gorodin is promising us unanimous approval for Hope. If Jordan gets a liaison post at a far-gone military psych facility we're going to have hidden in our budget.
God, Gerard said, and sat down.
You tell me how you buy Mikhail Corain's vote, and why Jordan Warwick's transfer has to be part of Gorodin's bargain.
Gerard had no doubts. It was certain that Ari had none.
He's become a problem,
Ari said. We can't touch him, Gerard said. Panic welled up in him. Sometimes Ari forgot she had limits, or that Prudence did.
He's counting on that, isn't he?
So quietly. Ari settled into the remaining chair.
It still has to be voted. It doesn't need to be voted until the facility exists, and we just got the appropriation.
Gerard was sweating. He resisted the impulse to mop his face. The sound screening tended to make his teeth ache, but at the moment the discomfort was mostly in his gut.
Well, it's not that bad,
Dennis said, and tilted his chair back, folding his hands on his ample stomach.
We can map this out. Geordie's being a fool. We can merge his wing right back into administration, absorb his staff and his records, that for a start.
He's not a fool, Ari said. I want to know if we're missing files.
You think he's left something in Novgorod?
What's ever stopped him?
Damn it, Gerard said. Ari, I warned you. Ari tilted her head, regarding him sidelong.
I'll tell you one thing. Even if he goes, son Justin won't.
We've got 5 more years of budget to fight through. What in hell are we going to do when Geordie's out there in front of the cameras?
Don't worry about it.
What do you mean, don't worry about it?
He's here, isn't he? Left his aides, his staff, everyone but Paul in Novgorod. I didn't confront him about the leak. I just sent Florian to advise him he was wanted. He's well aware what he's done, and I know he's done it. If you touch him, listen to me. He won't have done this without advance preparation. God knows what kind of harm he can do to us, or what kind of information he's smuggled out of here. My God, I didn't see this coming. Jordan, with his little feuds, his requests for transfer, his bickering on staff. No, we're still friendly. We have our little policy debates. We had one on the way home, and smiled at each other over drinks. Why not? There's always a chance I believed Gorodin.
He knows damn well you didn't.
And he knows I know.
Here we go. It's one of these.
And he knows that I know that he knows, round and round. So we smile at each other. I'll tell you something. I'm not worried. He's sure I won't move until I know what he's got. He's manipulating the situation. Our education special thinks he's the best there is. He's gambling everything on things going the way he predicts. He'll make me a counteroffer soon, and I'll make mine, and that's how we'll pass the months. He's sure he can match me move for move. We'll see. I'm going to my apartments. I'm sure Florian's run his checks by now. I'm going to have a shower, put my feet up a while, and read the logs. And have a decent meal. Formal dinner tonight. It's a session end, isn't it? Catlin can approve the menu.
I'll tell the staff, Dennis said. The thought of food turned Gerard's stomach.
It's not a total disadvantage, she said. Have you seen the news? The centrist coalition is showing seams this morning. Corain's made Iani Marino very, very upset. An old hand like Corain. This is moving much too fast for him. Corain had his people ready to walk. Now he shifts stance on them. The abolitionists will suspect a sellout. Won't they? Let the abolitionists peel off and start talking about dismantling the labs again. It's bound to make the moderates a little jealous. A little anxious.
That's where Jordan can do us the most damage. If he goes to the press...
Oh, you don't think the abolitionists are going to credit a voice out of Rezun? If he's saying the right things, they damn well will. Then we have to do something about his credibility, don't we? Think about it, Cherryh. Corrain's going to end up acquiescing. No, voting for the establishment of a Razun lab right on the Hope Colony route. The abolitionists haven't gotten saner, just quieter, and we have our own sleepers in their rank and file. Keep Corrain quite busy putting out fires on his own decks. Gorodin may find the whole noise a bit more than he wants. There are always deals we can offer him. He always stands with his feet either side of the line. Lou is the problem, that double-crossing bastard. But we can persuade him. This facility is exactly the kind of thing that may do it. I want you to look into these things. I don't need to tell you how discreetly. Use your military contacts. The Science Bureau is dispatching a ship to notify Reuben of his status. They're also going to take measures to establish him a protective residency in Fargon Blue Zone. The team is on its way Sunday, when Atlantis pushes off for Fargon.
Hiroko's going to be aboard?
Dennis asked.
Absolutely. There's not going to be a hitch. He'll get our staff right through customs, and Atlantis is running light.
Military can beat her.
A worry. But Hiroko's a much higher card on his own station, and he's bringing home the second biggest construction project Fargon's ever lusted after. First being the Hope Corridor, of course. There won't be a hitch. If the centrists try anything with Reuben, Hiroko can fry them, no question. We'd love that kind of ammunition. Did you see the clip? Reuben's a wide-eyed innocent. Pure science and total vulnerability. I thought that came across rather well.
They can throw that back at us, too, Gerard said.
We can rely on Hiroko, I think. At certain times, you have to let a thing go.
Even Warwick?
If they want him by then.
Two. Ari smiled gently across the table, across the salad with vinaigrette, product of their own gardens, and dusted it liberally with a spoonful of chaos, synthetic cheese, a salted yeast, actually, Spacer's affectation. Her mother had used it. Ari still liked the tang of it, and imported downworld at some little trouble. Most of the family abhorred it. Most of the family, capital F. Most of the family abhorred it. It was the formal dining hall, one long table for the family, and a large U-shaped table around the outside for the Azi who were closer than relatives, and somewhat more numerous, about 2 to 1. Herself at the head, that had been the case since the day Uncle Joffrey died. To her right, Gerard Nye, to her left, his brother Dennis, then Yanni Schwartz right side, left again, his sister Beth, and across from her, Beth's son by Gerard Nye, young Sully Schwartz, long-nosed and thin-faced, and looking preoccupied as usual, 16 and bored. Left next, and right again, Petros Ivanov and his 2 sisters Irene and Katrine, then Katrine's current passion, the dark-skinned Maury Karneth Nye, old Jane Strassen looking like a dowager empress in black and an ostentatious lot of silver, daughter Julia Strassen in green, a truly amazing décolletage, dear cousin Patrick Karnath Emery, who was far more Karnath than Emery, and absolutely butterfingered, he was already mopping his lap, Patrick's daughter, Fidial Karnath, olive-skinned and lovely, and her 32-year-old son Jules, who they had thought was Gerard's until they ran the genetics and found it was, of all people, Petros's. Then Robert Karnath Nye and his daughter, young Julia Karnath, and, of course, endmost, Jordan and Justin Warwick, who looked exactly like father and son, unless you had known Jordan 30 years ago and knew that they were twins. Vanity, vanity. Jordan had had his passages, who had not, but when it came to stowing his heredity, he had not trusted nature, or women. It was the temptation to godhood, perhaps, or the belief that he, being a special, was bound to produce another. A replicate citizen was not Azi. There were considerable legal differences between young Justin, say, and elegant red-haired Grant, at the second rank of tables, so close in all respects, born in the same lab, an insignificant day apart. But Justin, dark-haired, square-jawed, and, at a handsome, broad-shouldered 17, so very much Jordan's younger image, was CIT 976-88-2355-PR, that all-important citizen prefix, and that expensive parental replicate suffix. Replicate except for the little accidents like the break in Jordan's nose, the little scar on Justin's chin, and, oh, indeed, the personality and the ability. When Justin was a mote in a womb tank, the Balk project had already failed. But Ari was amused. Jordan had entertained notions that his tapes and his genes could overcome all odds. The lad was bright, but he was not Jordan. Thank God. Grant's number, on the other hand, was ALX 972, experimental, a design of her own, aesthetic in the extreme, and with an excellent antecedent, another special antecedent, sorry. Grant's number, on the other hand, was ALX-972, experimental, a design of her own, aesthetic in the extreme, and with an excellent antecedent. Another special gene set, but for certain legal reasons she had corrected a genetic fault, incidentally expressing a few aesthetic recessives, to an extent that the legitimate descendants of a certain slightly myopic, brown-haired, unathletic biologist with a heart defect would find astounding. Neither was Grant a biologist. An excellent student in tape design, an alpha capable of working on the structures which had made him what he was, structures wherein lay the legal difference, not in the substitution of certain sequences in the gene set, not in the wombs which gestated them. One infant had gone to a father's arms, to lie in a crib in the house, to hear nothing at times, or to deal with the fact that Jordan Warwick might be busy at some given time, and a meal might be late, or a noise startle him. The other had gone to a crib where human heartbeat gave way at intervals to a soothing voice, where activity was monitored, crying measured, reactions clocked and timed, then extensive tape and training for 3 years until Ari had asked Jordan to take the boy in. Nothing unusual. They fostered out the suspected alphas, as a rule, and in those days her relations with Jordan had been stormy but professional. A member of the house with a son the same age was a natural thought, and an alpha companion was a high-status prize for a household, even at Rezun. "I have every confidence in Justin," she had said that day to Jordan. "It's such a natural pairing. I'm perfectly willing to let that happen, on a personal basis, you understand, as long as I can continue my tapes and my tests with Grant." Meaning that the Azzy, as he grew, might pass into Justin's care, become his companion, which implied her faith that young Justin would be in that small percentage licensed to work with alphas, that Justin's own scores would be alpha equivalent. Not entirely to her astonishment, it had worked out very well. The correction was a routine one, minor, not likely to affect the Azzy's intelligence, although, within certain parameters, that had not been a primary concern in creating the set. So convenient to have a link to troublesome Jordan in those years, not informational, since there was hardly anything a 13-year-old Azzy knew in the house that she did not. But one never knew when it might be of use. She finished the salad, chatted with Gerard This is why I like her, she challenges me. She finished the salad, chatted with Gerard while the serving staff took away the plates and brought in the next course, a fine ham. Terrestrial pigs thrived at Rezun over the residue of the gardens, in sufficient numbers to provide seed stock for several other farms. Pigs and goats, humankind's oldest and hardiest food stock, with sense enough not to poison themselves on a stray sprig of native shrubbery. Horses and cattle had the damnedest self-destructive bent. "Do you know," she said, over the dessert, a simple ice, tangy and pleasant, "we are going to have to make some far-reaching adjustments in staff." Amazing how many ears were pricked at the table, and how quiet a room could get when she was only speaking to Dennis. "I really don't anticipate any difficulty with the Hope Bill." They were all listening now, not pretending to do otherwise. She smiled at her family, put down the spoon, and picked up the little cup of strong coffee. "You know how to read that. No difficulty. Forget the news reports. Everything is proceeding tolerably well on schedule, and we have a very exciting prospect in front of us. Certainly a very exciting prospect, a military psych facility at Fargon, in addition, which is going to make a real difference in operations here. You can congratulate Jordan for laying the groundwork. Really, just everything that may put the Hope route in our laps, and the new labs. Everything. That's what's going on. Jordan should have a lot of the credit for that."
Jordan's face was absolutely devoid of expression. "Let's drop the pretense. We're home. We're not in front of the cameras."
Ari flashed a smile.
"Jordan, I don't bear you the least ill will. I'm sorry if that offends you, but you've done Rezun, and me, a great favor. I truly don't begrudge you the rewards of it."
"The hell!"
Ari laughed gently and took another sip of coffee.
"Geordie, dear, I know you'd like to have upstaged me with this, but as it happens, Gorodin came to me, and I'm going to give you everything you asked for, on a platter. You'll get that long-awaited transfer, you and anyone in your wing who wants to go to Fargon, just as soon as the official request for military liaison comes down the tubes."
"What is this? What is this?" Yenny Schwartz asked.
"I don't say it'll be a bad thing,"
Ari said quite honestly, still smiling.
"I'm not pulling surprises on you, Yanni. Jordan pulled this one on me. I think everyone should think about it, those who will prefer to go out to the frontier, those who'd rather stay within the comforts of Rezun. God knows some of us would miss ham and fresh fruit. But the opportunities out there are worth thinking about."
Another sip of coffee, slow and thoughtful, watching Jordan's eyes like a fencer.
"The educational wing here will continue, of course. There are some of you who can't transfer, you understand that. We'll have to restructure here, rather well replicate the whole wing."
A little wider smile. It was a joke. Sully Schwartz woke up, a quick look around to see if people were supposed to laugh.
"Geordie, you'll have to lay out some recommendations."
"Of course," Jordan said, "but I'm sure you'll use your own list."
She laughed to keep it polite.
"Oh, you know damn well I will. But I really will respect your choices wherever I can. After all, I'll assume anyone on your list wants to transfer, and I'll assume you want them. Yanni, you can deal with Geordie on that."
There was a growing wariness behind the attentive faces. Young Sully finally seemed to have understood what was going on, perhaps to have figured out for the first time in his life what it was to sit in this room on family occasions, and not with the juniors down the hall. No one moved, not the family, not the Azzy at the tables round about. A sonorous clearing of the throat from Dennis.
"Well," he said, "well, Ari, after all—"
Another clearing of the throat.
"I don't suppose we could have some of those little cookies we had last night,
Wistfully.
"Yes, sir,"
a server said, close by the door, and slipped out, while Dennis ladled sugar into his coffee.
The essential thing is Rezun, isn't it? Ari, Geordie, Yanni, really, we all have the same thing at heart, which is the freedom to do our work. We all hate these administrative messes. We all do. It's just such a damned waste of our time, and there's so much more important on our desks than a lot of little regional authorities bickering away in Novgorod. I'm sure it's important whether station administrators can or can't hold stock in their own stations, but it's just not the kind of thing that we ought to have to sit through. I mean, the whole idea of the bureaus was never meant to take valuable people completely away from work. Council's certainly no great inconvenience to Corain or Chavez or God knows Bogdanovich, but it's not really productive to have Gorodin on a short string, and science, by my God, science is an absolute tragedy. I mean, really, Ari, it's a dreadful waste of your time and energy. I don't know why, Jordan said from his end of the table, with a wry lift of his wineglass, a rivalry old as their existence in Rezun, dinner witticisms. Since Ari just considers the whole damned universe her province. Ari laughed pro forma. Everyone was relieved. Everyone laughed because to do other than that was an incident, capital I, and no one wanted it, not even Jordan.
Well, you'll have your chance, won't you? She said. The whole Hope route right off Fargon, and you'll be working with old friends, so it's not like you'll be out there alone. If I were younger, Geordie, damned if I wouldn't jump at it. But Dennis is right. The politics is done, the whole course is laid, and I'm sure I'm anxious to get on about my work. You're anxious to get yours underway. I'd hate like hell to drop another administrative job in your lap, but I really want your expertise. You've got to set us up another educational wing here. Really an opportunity for you to hand us on a legacy, Geordie. I'm very serious.
I left that in cryogenics, Jordan said. Another small round of anxious laughter. Do you want another sample?
Ari chuckled and took a sip of her coffee.
What? Geordie, I thought you went the other way. But we do have a second source.
Justin blushed. People turned to see if he had. There was another laugh, much too thin.
I'm sure Geordie will cooperate,
Dennis said, intervening before knives came out. It was the ancient rule in this room. Nothing unpleasant. One retaliated with wit here, nothing else, and not too far.
I'm sure,
Ari said, and seriously,
we do have restructuring to do. I'm going to be doing some of my council work by proxy, figuring it's going to be a little tamer now that we have the major projects mapped out. There really shouldn't be any difficulty. I suppose I can fly down if they need me, but Dennis is very right. I'm 120 years old.
You've got a few more,
Dennis said.
Oh, yes, but I can see the wall. True.
The room was quiet again.
The Rubin project will take a great deal of my time. I'm not getting morbid, but you know and I know there's not an infinite amount of time for getting this thing moving. I'll leave most of the Fargon set up to you, Yanni. I'll be asking data from this department and that. I'll be wanting to oversee this process myself. Just a desire to have hands-on again. Maybe a little vanity.
She chuckled softly.
I'm going to be writing on my book, doing a little side research. Preparation. Retirement, I suppose.
The hell, Jordan said. She smiled, covered her cup with her hand when the server wanted to pour more coffee.
Oh, no, dear, I've caffeine enough to see me to my rooms, which is where I ought to go, figuring that the floor is still going up and down. We had a bitch of a lot of turbulence over the Kaukash, didn't we? And I don't think I really slept in Novgorod. Catelyn?
A chair moved, and Catelyn was there, and Florian with her. Catelyn drew her chair back for her.
Good night, all, she said,
and to Florian, quietly, as chairs went back and people began leaving,
tell Grant I'm reclaiming him.
Sirrah?
I need him, she said. Tell him I filed a new assignment for him. Jordan never did have legal custody of him. He surely realizes that.
"3. A moment, the Azzy Florian said, when Justin and Grant started out the door after Jordan and Paul, in the general mill of family and Azzy, headed their separate ways. Later, Justin said. His heart began to pound, the way it did any time he came near Ari or her bodyguards on anything but coldest business, and he took Grant by the arm and tried to get him out the door as Florian blocked Grant's path. I'm very sorry, Florian said, looking as if he were. Sarah has said she wants Grant. He's assigned to her now. For a moment, Justin did not realize what he had heard. Grant stood very still in his grip. He can retrieve his belongings, Florian said.
Tell her no.
They were blocking the Schwartzes from exit. Justin moved confusedly into the hall, drawing Grant with him, but Florian stayed with them.
Tell her, damn it, if she wants my cooperation in anything, he stays with me.
I'm terribly sorry, sir, Florian said, always soft-spoken, soft-eyed. She says that it was already done. Please understand. He should get his things. Catelyn and I will watch out for him the best we can.
She's not going to do this,
Justin told Grant, as Florian slipped back into the dining hall where Ari delayed. He was cold through and through. His supper sat uneasy at his stomach.
Wait here.
His father was waiting with Paul a little down the hall, and Justin crossed the distance in a half-dozen strides, face composed, showing no more, he hoped, than an understandable annoyance, and please God not as pale as he was afraid it was.
Something's come up with a project, he told Jordan. I have to go see about it.
Jordan nodded. Had questions, perhaps, but the explanation seemed to cover it, and Justin walked back again to the doorway where Grant stood. He put a hand on Grant's shoulder in passing, and went inside where Ari lingered talking to Gearóid nigh. He waited the few seconds until Ari deliberately passed her eye across him, a silent summons. She seemed to say something dismissing Gearóid, because Gearóid looked back too, then left. Ari waited.
What's this about Grant?
Justin asked when he was face-to-face with her.
I need him, Ari said. That's all. He's a special gene set. He's relevant to what I'm working on, and I need him now, that's all. Nothing personal. It is.
He lost control of his voice, 17 and facing a woman as terrible as his father. He wanted to hit her, and that was not an option. Ari, in Rezun, could do anything. To anyone. He had learned that.
What do you want? What do you really want out of me? I told you, it's not personal. Nothing like it. Grant can get his things. He can have a few days to calm down. You'll see him. It's not like you're not working in that wing. You're going to run tape on him. That's what he's for, isn't it? He's an experimental. Tests are what he pays for his keep. He pays for his keep as a designer, damn it. He's not one of your damn test subjects. He's
my brother, he almost said.
I'm sorry if you've lost your objectivity in this, and I'd suggest you calm yourself down right now. You don't have your license to handle an alpha yet, and you're not likely to get it if you can't control your emotions better than this. If you've given him promises you can't keep, you've mishandled him, you understand me? You've hurt him. God knows what else you've done, and I can see right now you and I are due for a long, long talk about what an alpha is, and what you've done with him, and whether or not you're going to get that license. It takes more than brains, my lad. It takes the ability to think past what you want, and what you believe, and it's about time you learned it. All right, I'll do what you want. He will. Just leave him with me. Calm down, here. Calm down. I'm not leaving him with anyone in that state. Also, she tapped him on the chest, you're dealing with me, dear, and you know I'm good at getting my own way. You know you always lose points when you show that much to your opposition, especially to a professional. You get those eyes dry, you put yourself in order, and you take Grant home and see he comes with everything he needs. Most of all, you calm him down and you don't frighten him any further. Where are your sensibilities? Damn you! What do you want? I've got what I want. Just go do what I tell you. You work for me, and you'll show up polite and respectful in the morning. Hear me? Now go take care of your business.
Ari turned and walked out the door that led to the service area and a lift upstairs. Catelyn and Florian barred his way, Ozzy, and without choice.
Florian,
she called from some distance, impatient, and Florian left Catelyn alone to hold the doorway. The worse, because Catelyn had no compunction such as Florian had. Catelyn would strike him, and strike hard, at the next step beyond her warning. "Go the other way, young sir," Catelyn said, "otherwise you'll be under arrest." He turned abruptly and walked back to the other door, where Grant stood, very pale and very quiet, witness to all of it. "Come on," Justin said, and grabbed him by the arm. Ordinarily, there would be a slight human resistance, a tension in the muscles. There was none. Grant simply came, walked with him when he let him go, and offered not a word till they were down the hall and in the lift that took them up to third-level residencies. "Why is she doing this?" "I don't know. I don't know. Don't panic. It's going to be all right." Grant looked at him, a fragile hope that hit him in the gut as the lift stopped. Down the hall again, to the apartment that was theirs, in a residential quiet zone, only a handful of passers-by at this hour. Justin took his keycard from its clip on his pocket and inserted it with difficulty in the slot. His hand was shaking. Grant had to see it. "No entries since last use of this key," the monitor's bland voice said, and the lights came on, since that was what he had programmed his minder to do for his entry at this hour, all the way through the beige and blue living room, to his bedroom. "Grant's here," he mumbled at it, and more lights came on, Grant's bedroom, visible through the archway leftward. "I'll get my things," Grant said, and, the first sign of fracture, a wobble in his voice when he asked, "Shouldn't we call Jordan?" God. Justin embraced him. Grant held on to him, trembling in long, spasmodic shivers, and Justin clenched his own arms tight, trying to think, trying to reason past his own situation, and the law inside Rezun which said that he could not protect the Azzi who had been a brother to him since he could remember. Grant knew everything that he knew. Grant and he had no difference, none, except that damning X on Grant's number that made him Rezun property as long as he lived. She could interrogate him about Jordan, about everything he knew or suspected, test systems on him, put him under tape with one structure and another, put sections of his memory under block, do any damned thing she wanted, and there was no way he could stop it. It was revenge against his father. It was a hold on him, who, the same way Grant had just been transferred, had been aptituded into Ari's wing. "Let her," he had said to his father, "let her take me into her staff. Don't contest it. It's all right. You can't afford a falling out with her right now, and maybe it's a good place for me to be." Because he had a notion then that his father, harried with plans, again, for getting a transfer, could lose too much. "You tell me," Jordan had said with the greatest severity, "you tell me immediately if she makes trouble for you." There had been trouble. There had been more than trouble from his second day in that wing. An interview with Ari in her office, Ari too close and touching him in a way that started out only friendly and got much too personal, while she suggested quietly that there was more reason than his test scores that she had requisitioned him into her wing, and that he and Grant both could accommodate her, that others of her aides did, and that was the way things were expected to be on her staff. Or, she had hinted, there were ways to make life difficult. He had been disgusted and scared, and worst of all, he had seen Ari's intention, the trap laid, slow provocations, himself the leverage she meant to wield against Jordan, a campaign to provoke him to an incident she could use. So he had gone along with it when she put her hands on him, and stammered his way through reports while she sat on the arm of his chair and rested her hand on his shoulder. She had asked him to her office after hours, had asked him questions, pretending to fill out personnel reports, and he mumbled answers, things he did not dwell on, things he did not want even to remember, because he had never even had a chance to do the things she asked him about, and never wanted in his life to do some of the things she talked about, and suspected that without tape, without drugs, without anything but his own naivete and her skill, she was in the process of twisting his whole life. He could fight back by losing his capacity to be shocked, by answering her flippantly, playing the game, but it was her game.
"I'll think of something," he said to Grant. "There's a way out of this. It'll be all right."
And he let Grant go off to his rooms to pack, while he stood alone in the living room in the grip of a chill that went to his bones. He wanted to phone Jordan, ask advice, whether there was anything legal they could do. But it was all too likely Jordan would go straight to Ari to negotiate Grant free of her. Then Ari might play other cards, like tapes of those office sessions. Oh God, then Jordan would go straight to Science Bureau and launch a fight that would break all the careful agreements and lose him everything. Query the house computers on the law, but there was nothing he dared use. Every logon was recorded. Everything left traces. There was no way that Rezun would not win a head-on challenge. He did not know the extent of Ari's political power, but it was enough that it could open new exploration routes, subvert companies on distant star stations, and affect trade directly with old Earth itself. And that was just the visible part of it. Beyond the archway, he heard the sounds of the closet door, saw Grant piling his clothes onto the bed. He knew suddenly where Grant was going, the way they had dreamed of when they were boys, sitting on the banks of the Novaya Volga, sending boats made of old cans floating down to Novgorod for city folk to marvel at. And later, on a certain evening when they had talked about Jordan's transfer, about the chance of them being held until Jordan could get them out. It was the worst case now, he thought, not the way they had planned, but it was the only chance they had. He walked into Grant's room, laid a finger on his lips for silence because there was security monitoring. Jordan had told him it went on. He took Grant's arm, led him quickly and quietly out into the living room toward the door, took his coat from the closet. No choice about that. It was close to freezing outside. People came and went from wing to wing in the open. It was ordinary enough. He handed Grant his, and led him out into the hall. "Where to?" Grant's worried look said plainly. "Justin, are you doing something stupid?" Justin took his arm and hauled Grant along, down the hall, back to the lift. He pushed T for the tunnel level. The car shot downward. God, let there be no stops on Main. "Justin." He shoved Grant against the wall of the lift, held him there, never mind that Grant was a head taller. "Quiet," he said. "That's an order. Not a word. Nothing. Hear?" He did not speak to Grant that way. Ever. He was shaking. Grant clamped his jaw and nodded, terrified, as the lift door opened on the dingy concrete of the storm tunnels. He dragged Grant out, backed him against the wall again. Calmer this time. "Now you listen to me. We're going down to the town. Listen to me. I want you to go null. Deep state all the way. Right now. Do it. And stay that way. That's an order, Grant. If you never in your life did exactly what I want, do it now. Now! Hear me?" Grant took a gulp of air, composed himself then, expressionless in 2 desperate breaths. No panic now. Steady. "Good," Justin said. "Put the coat on and come on." Up another lift to the administration wing, the oldest. Back to the antiquated ad wing kitchens, where the night shift staff did dinner cleanup and breakfast prep for the catering service. It was the escape route every kid in the house had used at one time or another, through the kitchens, back where the ovens were, where the air conditioning never was enough, where staff from generation to generation had propped the fire door open with a trash bin to get a breeze. The kitchen workers had no inclination to report young walkthroughs, not unless someone asked, and administration never stopped the practice. The routed juvenile CIT truants and pranksters passed witnesses who would, if asked, readily say yes. Justin Warwick and his Azzy had gone out that door, but not until they were missed. "Shh," he mimed to the kitchen Azzy, who gave them bewildered and anxious looks. The late hour, and the fact that they were older than the usual fugitives who came this way. Past the trash bin, down the steps, into the chill dark. Grant overtook him by the pump shed that was the first cover on the hill before it sloped rapidly to the road. "We're going down the hill," Justin said then, "taking the boat." What about Jordan? Grant objected.
He's all right. Come on.
He broke away, and Grant ran after him, pelted downslope to intercept the road. Then they strolled at a more ordinary pace down through the floodlit intersections of the warehouses, the repair shops, the streets of the lower town. The few guards awake at this hour were on the perimeters, to mind the compound fences and the weather reports, not two boys from the house bound down toward the airport road. The bakery and the mills ran full scale at night, but they were far off across the town, distant gleam of lights as they left the last of the barracks. "Is Jordan getting hold of Merrill?" Grant asked.
"Trust me, I know what I'm doing."
"Justin."
"Shut up, Grant. Hear me?"
They reached the edge of the port. The field lights were out right now, but the beacon still blipped its steady strobe into the dark of a mostly vacant world. Far off, the freight warehouses and the big Raisún Air hangar showed clear, brightly lit, night work and maintenance going on with one of the commercial planes. "Justin, does he know?" "Sorry. Justin, does he know?" Much better.
"He'll handle it. Come on."
Justin set out at a run again, leaving Grant no breath for questions, down the road that passed the end of the runway to the barge dock and down across the concrete bridgeway to the low-lying warehouses at the edge of the river. No one locked the doors down here at the small boathouse. No one needed to. He pushed at the door of the shabby prefab, winced at the creak of the hinge. Inside, an iron grid whispered hollowly under their feet. Water splashed and slapped at the pilings and buffers, starlight reflecting wetly around the outlines of the boats moored here. The whole place smelled of river water and oil, and the air was burning cold. "Justin," Grant said, "for God's sake."
"Everything is all right. You go exactly the way we planned."
"I'm not leaving. You are."
"You're out of your mind. Justin!"
Justin clambered aboard the nearest boat, opened up the pressurized cabin door, and left Grant nothing to do but follow him aboard with his objections.
"Justin, if you stay now, they can arrest you. And if I take you out of here, there's no way in hell I'll ever get certified to be near you. You know that. So I'm not down here tonight. I don't know a thing about this. I just go back up there, say I never left my room. How am I to know where you went? Maybe a platithere ate you and got indigestion."
He flipped the on switch, checked the gauges, one toggle switch and another.
"There you go. Everything's full. Batteries all charged. Wonderful how the staff keeps things up, isn't it?"
"Justin..." Grant's voice was shaking. He had his hands in his pockets. The air was bitter chill near the water. "Listen to me now. Let's have some sense here. I'm Azzy. I was listening to tape in the cradle, for God's sake. If she runs something on me, I can handle it. I can rip the structures apart and tell you if there were any bugs in it."
"The hell you can."
"I can survive her tests, and there's no way she can axe my contract. There's no axe code. I know for a fact there's not. I know my sets, Justin. And let's just forget this. Let's just forget this and go up the hill, and we'll figure out another way. If it gets bad, we always have this for an option."
"Shut up and listen to me. Remember how we mapped this out. First lights you can see on your right are still Raisún. That's the number 10 precip station up on the bluffs. The lights on your left, two clicks on, will be Mauryville. If you run completely dark, you can pass before Ari gets wind of this, and it's a clear night. Remember, stay to the center of the channel. That's the only way to miss the bars. And for God's sake, be careful of snags. Current comes from the left when you get to the Kennecut. You turn into it, and the first lights you see after that, 2, maybe 3 hours on, that's Kruger's. You tell them who you are, and you give them this." He turned on a dim chart light and scribbled a number down on the pad clipped to the dash. Under the number, he wrote MERILD. "Tell them to call Merrill, no matter the hour. You can tell Merrill when he gets there. Tell him Ari's blackmailing Jordan through me. Damn it, that's all he has to know. Tell him I can't come until my father's free, but I had to get you out of there. You're one more hostage than Jordan can cope with. Understand?"
"Yes," Grant said in a faint voice, Azzy-like. "Yes."
"The Krugers won't betray you. Tell them I said sink the boat if they have to.
It's Emery's. Merrill will handle everything else. Ari will call the police. That's fine. Let her. Don't try to go past the Kennecut. If you have to, the next place on down the Volga is Avery, overnight, maybe more, and she could intercept you. Besides, you'd get caught up in Cyteen law and police down there, and you know what that could be. Kruger's is it. It has to be. He looked back at Grant's face in the faint glow of the chart light, and it struck him suddenly that he might not see him again. Be careful. For God's sake, be careful. Justin. Grant embraced him hard. You be careful. Please. I'll push you out of here. Go on. Dog the seals down. The other boat, Grant said. I'll take care of it. Go! Justin turned and ducked out of the door, hopped up on the deck and onto the echoing grating. He cast off the ties then, threw them aboard, shoved the big boat back with his foot and with his hands till it drifted clear, scraping the buffers. It swung round sideways, inert and dark, then caught the current off the boathouse and drifted, following the sweep of the main channel, turning again. He opened up the second boat and threw up the cover on the engine. The starter was electronic. He pulled the solid-state board, dropped the cover down, closed the hatch behind him, and dropped the board into the water before he made the jump between the boat and the metal grid of the dock. In the same moment he heard the distant, muffled cough of Grant's engine. Solid, then, chugging away. He cleared the boathouse, latched the door, and ran. It was dangerous to be down here on the river edge, in the dark, dangerous anywhere less patrolled. Somewhere something native could have gotten in, weed in the ditch, stuff carried in the air. God knew. He tried not to think about it. He ran, took up on the road again, walking as he caught a stitch in his side. He expected commotion. He expected someone on the night shift at the airport to have seen the boat, or heard its engine start. But the work at the hangars was noisy. Maybe someone had had a power wrench going. Maybe they thought it was some passing boat from Mauryville or up Volga with a bulky engine. And they had the bright lights to blind them. So far, their luck was 100%. Tilly got to the house and found the kitchen door locked. He sat down a while on the steps, teeth chattering, trying to think it through, and gave it a while, time for a boat to get well on its way. But if he sat there the night, then it was unarguable that it was conspiracy. If he gave them evidence of that, it would land on Jordan. So there was nothing to do, finally, but use his key and trip the silent warnings he knew would be in place by now. Security showed up to meet him in the halls by the kitchens. "Sir," the Azzy in charge said, "where are you coming from?" "I felt like a walk," he said. "That's all. I drank too much. I wanted some cold air." The Azzy called that in to the security office. Justin waited, expecting the man's expression to change then when the order came back. But the Azzy only nodded. "Good evening, sir." He walked away, weak-kneed, rode the lift up, and walked all the lonely way to the apartment. The lights came on inside. "No entries since the last use of this key," the dulcet voice of the minder said. Should it be, "No entries till the last use of... no entries since the last use of this key," the dulcet voice of the minder said. Much better. Stupid, sexy minder voice. He went into Grant's room. He picked things up and hung them back in the closet and then put them in drawers. He found small, strange things among Grant's belongings. A tinsel souvenir Jordan had brought back from holiday in Novgorod, a cheap curio spacer patch of the freighter Kitty Hawk that he had brought back from Novgorod airport, for Grant, who had not been allowed to go. A photo of the pair of them, aged 4, Grant pale-skinned, skinny, and shockingly red-haired, himself in that damned silly hat he had thought was grown up, digging in the garden with the Azzy. Another photo of them, at a mutually gawky 10, standing on the fence of the livestock pens, barefoot, toes curled identically pigeon-toed over the rail, arms under chins, both grinning like fools. God. It was as if a limb had been cut off, and the shock had not quite gotten to the brain yet, but it had hit his gut, and it told him it was going to get worse. Ari would call him now, he had no doubt. He went back to the living room, sat down on the couch, hugged his arms about himself, and stared at the patterns in the veneer of the table, anything but shut his eyes and see the boat and the river. Or think of Ari. "Only Grant?" Merrill would ask when he got that phone message. Merrill would take alarm. Merrill might well call Rezun and try to talk to Jordan, and he could not afford that. He tried to think what he could say, how he would cover it. Grant could tell Merrill enough, maybe, to set Merrill working on a rescue of some sort, but, oh God, if something got to Jordan about Ari and him, either from Grant, from Merrill, or from Ari, and Jordan blew up. No. Jordan was too cagey to do something without thinking it out. The time passed. The air of the apartment felt cold as the chill outside. He wanted to go into his own bed and pull the covers about him, but he asked the minder for more heat and kept to the living room, fighting to stay awake, afraid he would sleep through a minder call. None came. Small boats went out of one port and never got to another, that was all. It happened even to experienced pilots. He thought about every step he had taken, every choice he had, over and over again. He thought about calling Jordan, telling him everything. No, he told himself. No. He could handle it with Ari. Jordan needed help, and Jordan not knowing was the only way it worked. A plane flew over. Grant heard it even above the steady noise of his own engines, and his hands sweated on the wheel as he ran down the clear middle of the river, his meager speed boosted by the current. He had no lights on, not even the small chart light on the panel, for fear of being spotted. He did not dare increase the speed of the engines now, for fear of widening the white boil and curl of wake that might show to searchers. The plane went over and lost itself in dark and distance. But in a little time it circled back again. He saw it coming up the river behind him, a searchlight playing over the black waters. He put the throttle up full, and felt the easy rock of the boat become an increasing vibration of waves as the bow came up. To hell with the wake, then, and with the floating snags that had sunk many a boat in the Novaya Volga. If they had sent boats out from Morryville, or from the other end of Rezun, and if someone on those boats had a gun, shots could go through the cabin, breach the seals fatally even if they missed him, or go through the hull and maybe hit the fuel tanks. But they had rather put a hole in the boat and slow it with waterlogged compartments. They would not, he was sure, want him dead if they had a choice. He did not intend to harm Justin. That was his first determination. Not to be used against Justin, nor against Jordan. And beyond that, even an Azzy had a right to be selfish. The plane roared directly over him, throwing the decks into bright light, blinding glare through the cabin windows. The beam passed on a moment, leaving him half blind in the sudden dark. He saw it light the trees on the far side of the river, pale gray of native foliage against the night. Suddenly the bow fell off to starboard, and that floodlit view of the bank turned up off the bow, not the beam. In a moment's fright he thought the propeller might have fouled, and then he knew it was current. And then he knew it was current he had run into, the Kennecott's effluence into the Volga. He put the helm over, still blind except for the fleeting glimpse the searchlight had shown him of the wooded ground on the far side. He could run aground. He dared not turn the lights on. Then he saw the shadow of the banks, tall trees black against the night sky on either side of an open space of starlit water. He drove for it, and the boat shuddered and jolted to impact along the keel, scrape of sand and a shock that threw him violently as the boat slewed out of control. He caught himself against the dash then, saw a black wall in front of him, and swerved with everything the boat had. Something banged against the bow and scraped portside. Snag. Sandbar and snag. He heard it pass aft, saw the clear water ahead of him, and hoped to God it was the Kennicut he was in after that sort-out, and not the Volga. He could not tell. It looked the same as the other, just black water glancing with starlight. He risked the chart light for a second to sneak a look at the compass. Bearing northeast. The Volga could bend that much, but he thought it had to be the Kennicut. The plane had not come back. It was even possible that the maneuver had confused it, and he was not, God knew, running with the locator beacon on. Ari's power was enough to get Cyteen's station in on the hunt, and that plane's beacon could guide the geosynchronous surveillance satellites to a good fix, but so far as he knew, there was no strike capacity on the locators, and he could still, he hoped, outrun any intercept from Moreyville or further down the Volga. First lights after that, Justin had said. 2, maybe 3 hours further on, up a river that had no further development on its banks. Kruger's station was a mining outpost, largely automated, virtually all related to each other. What Aussie they brought in all got their CIT papers within the year, and a share of Kruger mines on top of it. A dream of an assignment, the kind of place Aussie whispered among themselves did exist if one were very, very good. And if one's contract was affordable. Nothing like that existed for a 17-year-old Aussie with an X on his number, and all the political sense a boy could gain, living in Rezun and in the house, advised him that Justin had done something for his sake desperate beyond all reason. Advised him that the Krugers might well have welcomed a Warwick with an Aussie he had a valid contract. Advised him that the Krugers might well have welcomed a Warwick with an Aussie he had a valid contract for, but there were good reasons they might not welcome that Aussie by himself. God knew. He was, the more he had time to think about it, a liability on all accounts, except for what he knew about Rezun, Ari, and Warwick business, which people might insist he give up, and he had had no instructions on that. He was Alpha, but he was young, and he was Aussie, and all that he had learned only told him that his responses were conditioned, his knowledge limited, his reasoning potentially flawed. Never worry about your tapes, Jordan had told him gently. If you ever think you're in trouble, come to me and tell me what you think and what you feel, and I'll find the answer for you. Remember, I've got your charts. Everything's all right. He had been 7 then. He had cried in Jordan's arms, which had embarrassed him, but Jordan had patted him on the back and hugged him the way he hugged Justin, called him his other son, and assured him even born men made mistakes and felt confused. Which had made him feel better and worse, to know that born men had evolved out of old Earth by trial and error, and that when Ari had decided he should exist, she had done something of the same thing. Trial and error. Which was all the X on his number meant to a 7-year-old. He had not understood then that it meant Jordan could not deliver what he promised, or that his life was Rezun's and not Jordan's. He had clutched that "my other son" to him like daylight and breath, a whole new horizon of being. Then he had grown enough, when he and Justin were 12 and Justin discovered girls, to know that sex made things very different. "Why?" he had asked Jordan, and Jordan had walked him into the kitchen, his arm about his shoulders while he explained that an alpha was always mutating the instructions the tapes gave him, that he was very bright, and that his body was developing, and that he really should go to the Aussie who specialized in that. "What if I make somebody pregnant?" he had asked.
"You won't," Jordan had said, which he had not asked about then, but he knew later he should have. "You just can't mess around with anyone in the house. They aren't licensed."
He had been outraged, and thought there was a kind of irony in it. "You mean because I'm an alpha? You mean whoever I go to bed with—"
"Has to be licensed. You don't get a license at your age, which lets out all the girls your age. And I don't want you sleeping with old Aunt Mari, all right?" That had been halfway funny. At the time. Mari Warwick was decrepit, on the end of her rejuve. It had gotten less funny later,
It was hard to stay cool while a Karnath girl put her hands where they did not belong and giggled in his ear, and to be supposed to say, "I'm sorry, sirrah, but I can't." While Justin, poor Justin, got girlish giggles and evasions because he was family. And Justin's Azzy was fair game, or would have been if he had only been beta. "Lend him, can't you?" Julia Karnath had asked Justin outright in Grant's presence when Grant knew damned well that Justin was courting Julia for himself. Grant had wanted to sink through the floor. As it was, he had gone blank-faced and proper, and kept very quiet later when Justin sulked and said that Julia had turned him down. "You're better looking," Justin had complained. "Ari made you perfect, damn it. What chance have I got?" "I'd rather be you," he had answered faintly, realizing for the first time that was the truth. And he had cried, for the second time in his life that he remembered, just cried for no reason that he could figure out, except that Justin had hit a nerve. Or a tape structure. Because he was made of both. He had never been sure after that, until Jordan had let him see the structures of his own tapes when he was 16 and starting into advanced design studies. He had figured out enough of his tape structures on his own that Jordan had opened the book for him and let him see what he was made of, and so far he had not traced any lines that could lead to fear of sex. But alphas mutated their own conditioning constantly. It was a constant balancing act over an abyss of chaos. Nothing could dominate. Balance in everything. Or the world became chaos. Dysfunction. And Azzy, who had become his own counselor, was begging for trouble. And Azzy was so terribly fragile, and so very likely to get into a situation he could not handle, in a larger game than anyone had bothered to tell him about. "Damn it, Justin!" He wiped his eyes with his left hand and steered with his right, trying to watch where he was going. He was, he told himself, acting the fool. Like a born man. Like I was like them. I'm supposed to be smarter. I'm supposed to be a damn genius. Except the tapes don't work that way and I'm not what they wanted me to be. Maybe I just don't use what I've got. So why don't I speak up louder? Why didn't I grab Justin and haul him off to his father and if I had... Why didn't I grab Justin and haul him off to his father if I had to hit him to do it? Because I'm a damn Azzy, that's why. Because I go to jelly inside when someone acts like they know what they're doing and I stop using my head, that's why. Oh, damn. I should have stopped him. I should have dragged him aboard with me. I should have taken him to the Krugers and gotten him safe, and then he could have protected both of us, and Jordan would be free to do something. What was he thinking of? Something I couldn't? Damn it, that's the trouble with me. I haven't got any confidence. I'm always looking to be sure before I do anything, and I don't do a damn thing. I just take orders. Because the damn tapes have got their claws into me. They never told me to hesitate. They just make me do it because the tapes are sure. They're so damn fucking sure, and nothing in the real world is. That's why we never make our own minds up. We've known something that has no doubt, and born men never have. That's what's the matter with us. The boat hit something that jolted the deck, and Grant threw the wheel over and corrected furiously, sweating. Fool indeed. He suddenly arrived at the meaning of it all and damned near holed his boat, which was the kind of thing that happened to born men, worked. Oh, whoops, I skipped a line. Which was the... fool indeed. He suddenly arrived at the meaning of it all and damned near holed his boat, which was the kind of thing that happened to born men, Justin would say, just the same as anybody else, which was how things worked. A second cosmic truth in 60 seconds. His mind was working straight, or he was scared into hyperdrive because he suddenly had a sense of what it was to be a born man, and to be a fool right on top of understanding everything. One had to swallow down the doubts and just go. How often had Jordan told him that? The doubts aren't tape. They're life, son. The universe won't break if you fuck up. It won't even break if you break your neck. Just your private universe will. You understand that? It's actually fairly sage advice, actually. It's kind of grim, but that is the truth. I think so, he had said, but that had been a lie. Till now that it jumped into clear focus. I'm free, he thought. Out here, between here and the Krugers, I'm free, on my own, the first time in my life. And then he thought, I'm not sure I like it. Fool. Wake up. Pay attention. Oh my God, is that plane coming back? Is that the plane coming back? As a light showed suddenly behind him. A boat. Oh God, it's a boat back there. He shoved the throttle wide. The boat lifted its bow and roared along the Kennecut. He turned the lights on. They shone on black water, on water that swirled with currents, on banks closer than the Volgas, banks overgrown with the gangling shapes of weeping willies, trees that tended to break as they aged and rot worked on them, trees which shed huge gnarled knots of dead wood into the Volga, navigation hazards far worse than rocks, because they floated and moved constantly. The lights were less risk now, he figured, than running blind. But there would be guns back there, maybe. Maybe a boat that could overpower the runabout. He would be surprised if Morryville had something that could outrun him. Damned surprised, he thought, with a cold knot of fear at his gut, watching the light wink out around a turning of the river, and then reappear in his rearview mirror. A boat out of the precip station, maybe. Maybe that end of Rezun had boats. He had no idea. He applied his attention forward after that brief glance, center of the channel, Justin had warned him. Justin, at least, had taken the boat back and forth to Morryville and down to Precip 10. Oh, sorry. Justin, at least, had taken the boat back and forth to Morryville and down to Precip 10, and he had talked to people at Morryville who had gone all the way to Novgorod on the river. Justin had done the talking, and Grant had paid attention mostly to the Novgorod part, because that had been what he was curious about. He and Justin, talking together about taking a boat that far someday, just heading down the river. He steered wildly around a snag floating with one branch high. A whole damned tree, that one. He saw the root mass following like a wall of tangled brush in the boat's spot, and swerved wider, desperately. God, if one of those came floating sideways, if the bow caught it. He kept going. And the light stayed behind him until he saw the lights Justin had promised him shining on the right, out of the dark. Ambush, he thought in the second heartbeat after he had seen them, because everything had become a trap. Everything was an enemy. But they were too high. They were too many. Lights that twinkled behind the screen of weeping willies and paper barks. Lights that were far too high for the river. Lights blinking red atop the hills, warning aircraft of the obstacles of precip towers. Then his knees began feeling weak, and his arms began shaking. He missed the light from behind him when he looked to see, and he thought for the first time to put Justin's note in his pocket, and to take the paper that had been under it, in the case someone returned the boat to Rezun. He throttled back, seeking some dockage, alarmed as the spotlight showed up a low, rusty wall on the riverside, and another after that. Barges, he realized suddenly. Kruger's was a mining settlement. They were ore barges, but not so big as the barges that came down from the north. But the whole place was a dock, and there was a place for a little boat to nose to. There was a ladder that went up from a lower deck to an upper one, which meant that he was not in the wild anymore, and he could breach the seals. But he did not do that. He did not think he ought to use the radio, since Justin had not told him anything about it, and he was not sure how to work it in any case. He just blew the horn repeatedly until someone turned the dockside lights on, and people turned out to see what had come to them from the river. "5. "You have a phone call," the minder said, and Justin started out of what had become sleep without his knowing it, lying as he had all night, curled up on the living room couch. The sound brought him up on his elbow and onto his arm, and then, as the minder cut in and answered it, to his feet. "I'm here," he said aloud to the minder, and heard it tell the caller. "Justin is in. A moment, please." He rubbed a face prickly with the faint stubble he could raise, eyes that refused to focus. "I'm here," he said, his heart beating so hard it hurt, and waited for the bad news.
"Good morning," Ari said to him. "Sorry to bother you at this hour, Justin, but where is Grant?"
"I don't know," he said. "Time. What time?" He rubbed his eyes and tried to focus on the dim numbers of the clock on the wall console. 5 a.m. He's got to be at Kruger's by now. He's got to. Why? Isn't he there? He looked beyond the arch, where the lights were still on, where Grant's bed was unslept in, proof that everything was true. Grant had run. Everything he remembered had happened.
We can't have gotten away with it. Justin, I want to talk with you first thing when you get in today.
Yes? His voice cracked. It was the hour. He was shivering.
At 0800, when you get in, on the Wing 1 lab. In the Wing 1 lab.
Yes, Sarah. The contact went dead. Justin rubbed at his face and squeezed his eyes shut, jaw clamped. He felt as if he was going to be sick. He thought of calling his father, or going to him. But Ari had given him plenty of latitude to do that, and maybe it was what he was supposed to do, or maybe it was Ari trying to make him think it was what he was supposed to do, so that he would shy away from it. Trying to outthink her was like trying to outthink his father. And he was trying to do both. He made himself a breakfast of dry toast and juice, all he could force onto his unwilling stomach. He showered and dressed and paced, delaying about the little things, because there was so much time, there was so damned much time to wait. It was deliberate. He knew that it was. She did everything for a reason. Grant might be in the hands of the police. He might be back at Rezun. He might be dead. Ari meant to drop something on him, get some reaction out of him, and get it on tape. He prepared himself for anything she could say, even the worst eventuality. He prepared himself, if he had to say, "I don't know. He left. I assumed he was going to you. How could I know? He's never done anything like this." At 07:45, he left his apartment and took the lift down to the main hall, passed Wing 1 security, walked to his own office, unlocked the door, turned on the lights, everything as he usually did. He walked down the corridor where Jane Strassen was already in her office, and nodded a good morning to her. He rounded the corner and took the stairs down to the lab section at the extreme end of the building. He used his keycard on the security lock of the white doors and entered a corridor of small offices, all closed. Beyond, the double doors gave onto the dingy Wing 1 lab, with its smell of alcohol and chill and damp that brought back his early student days in this place. The lights were on. The big cold room at the left had its vault door standing wide, brighter light coming from that quarter. He let the outer doors shut and heard voices. Florian walked out from the vault door of the lab. Not unusual for a student to be here, not unusual for techs to be in and out of here. Lab 1 was old, outmoded by Building B's facilities, but it was still sound. Researchers still used it, favoring it over the longer walk back and forth to the huge birth labs over in B, preferring the old hands-on equipment to the modern, more automated facilities. Ari had been down here a lot lately. She kept a lot of her personal work in the old cold lab, as convenient a storage for that kind of thing, he had figured, as there was in Wing 1. Rubin Project, he thought. Earlier, her presence down here had puzzled him, when Ari did not need to do these things herself, when she had excellent techs to do the detail work. It no longer puzzled him. I'll be wanting to oversee the process myself, just a desire to have hands-on again. Maybe a little vanity. I'll be wanting to oversee the process myself, just a desire to have hands-on again. Maybe a little vanity. It was also private, the kind of situation with her that he had spent weeks trying to avoid. "Cherryh is expecting you," Florian said. "Thank you," he said, meticulously ordinary. "Do you know what's about?" "I would hope you do, sir." Florian answered him. Florian's dark eyes said nothing at all as he slid a glance toward the cold lab door. "You can go in. Cherryh, Justin Warwick is here."
"All right."
Ari's voice floated out. Justin walked over to the open door of the long lab where Ari sat on a work stool, at a counter, working at one of the old-fashioned separators.
"Damn," she complained without looking up. "I don't trust it. Got to get 1 out of B. I'm not going to put up with this."
She looked up, and the hasty lift of her hand startled him as his hand left the vault door. He realized he had moved the door then, and caught it and pushed the massive seal door back, steadying it in frustration at his own young awkwardness that rattled him when he most wanted composure.
"Damn thing," Ari muttered. "Jane's damn penny pinching. You touch it, it swings on you. That's going to get fixed. How are you this morning?"
"All right."
"Where's Grant?"
His heart was already beating hard. It picked up its beats, and he forced it to slow down. "I don't know. I thought he was with you."
"Of course you did. Grant stole a boat last night. Sabotaged the other one. Security tracked him to Kruger's. What do you know about it?"
"Nothing. Nothing at all."
"Of course not." She turned on the stool. "Your companion planned the whole thing."
"I imagine he did. Grant's very capable." It was going too easily. Ari was capable of much, much more, of spinning it out instead of going straight to the point. He held himself back from too much relief, as if it were a precipice and the current were carrying him too quickly toward it. Florian was still outside. There were no witnesses to what she said, or what she ordered. There was a lock on the doors out there, and there might well be a recorder running.
"I wish he had told me."
Ari made a clicking with her tongue.
"You want to see the security reports? You both went out last night. You came in alone."
"I was looking for Grant. He said he was going to borrow a carry bag from next door. He never came back." Ari's brows lifted.
"Oh, come now."
"Sorry, that's what I was doing."
"I'm really disappointed in you. I'd expected more invention."
"I've told you everything I know."
"Listen to me, young friend. What you did is theft. You know that? You know what happens if Rezun files charges."
"Yes," he said as calmly, as full of implication as he could make it. "I really think I do."
"We're not Cyteen."
"I know."
"You're very smug. Why?"
"Because you're not going to file charges."
"You want to bet on that?"
He was supposed to react. He smiled at her. He had himself that far under control, not at all knowing whether or not Grant was in her hands. "I'm betting on it," he said, and held his voice steady. "You've got me. You've got me. You haven't got Grant. As long as things go right with me and my father, Grant keeps his mouth shut, and we're all just fine."
"That's why you stayed behind."
That had bothered her. The irrational act. He smiled wider, a thin, carefully held triumph, alone in her territory. "One of us had to assure you we'll keep quiet otherwise."
"Of course. Did Jordan plan this?"
He did react then. He knew that he had. It was an unexpected and offhanded praise. "No," he said.
"You did."
Ari gave a breath of a laugh, and he did not like that, even when all the movements of her body, her rocking back against the back of the lab stool, her rueful smile, all said that she was surprised. Ari played her own reactions the way his father did, with all her skill, all the way to the end of a thing. So must he. He gave a matching, deprecatory shrug.
"It's really very good," Ari said, but you have to put so much on Grant."
"He's dead," he thought, bracing himself for the worst thing she could say. She might lie about that. "I trust him," he said.
"There's one flaw in your setup, you know."
"What would that be?"
"Jordan, he's really not going to like this."
"I'll talk to him." His muscles started to shake, the cold of the cryogenics conduits that ran overhead seeming to leach all the warmth from him. He felt all his control crumbling and made a profound effort to regroup. It was a tactic his father had taught him, this alternate application of tension and relief she was using, watching cues like the dilation of his eyes, the little tensions in his muscles, everything fallen into a rhythm like a fencer, up, down, and then something out of the rhythm the moment he had discovered the rules. He saw it coming. He smiled at her, having gotten command of himself with that thought. He'll be amused. He watched a slow grin spread over Ari's face, either his point or a deliberate dropping of the shield for a moment to make him think it was.
"You really have nerve," Ari said, "and you aren't at all cocky, are you? Damn, boy, the edges are ragged. You're not real confident you've got all the pieces in your hands, but I'll give it to you. That's a damned good maneuver. Harder than hell to do twice, though."
"I don't need to leave until my father does."
"Well, now, that is a problem, isn't it? Just how are we going to disengage this little tangle? Have you thought it all the way through? Tell me how it works when it comes time for Jordan to go off-world. I'm interested."
"Maybe you'll make me an offer." Ari flashed a bright smile.
"That's marvelous. You were so quiet. What did you do? Try to throw those test scores?"
"You're supposed to be able to figure that out."
"Oh, cheek!" She outright laughed. "You are bright. You've taught me something. At my age, I value that. You're very fond of Grant to give up your camouflage for him. Very fond of him."
She leaned against the counter, one elbow on it, looking soberly up at him.
"Let me tell you something, dear. Jordan loves you very much. Very, very much. It shows in the way you behave. And I must say he's done a marvelous job with Grant. Children need that kind of upbringing, but there's a dreadful cost to that. We're mortal. We lose people. And we really hurt when they hurt, don't we? Families are a hell of a liability. What are you going to tell Jordan?"
"I don't know. As much as I have to."
"You mean as much as we'll let him know? You mean as much as we'll let him know he's won?"
Break and reposition. He only smiled at her, refusing a debate with a master.
"Well," she said, "you've done Jordan proud in this one. I don't say it's wise. The plan was very smart. The reasons are very, very stupid. But then, devotion makes us fools, doesn't it? What do you suppose Jordan would do if I charged you with this?"
"Go public. Go to the Bureau. And you don't want that."
"Well, but there's a lot else we can do, isn't there? Because his son really is guilty of theft, of vandalism, of getting into files that don't concern him. And there's so much of that doesn't have to happen. Jordan can make charges. I can make charges. You know, if this breaks, that appointment he wants won't make it, no matter what interests are behind it. They'll desert it, unless I really wanted to take measures to recover Grant and prosecute those friends of yours. That's what you've missed, you know. That I can do just exactly what you did, break the law. And if someone brings out your part in this, and if your father has to listen to your personal reasons, our little private sessions, it's really going to upset him."
"It won't do you any good if I go to court, either. You can't afford it. You've got the votes in council right now. You want to watch things fall apart, you lay a hand on Grant. And I talk. You watch it happen."
"You damned little sneak," she said slowly. "You think you understand it that well."
"Well enough to know my friends won't use a card before they have to."
"What have you got on the Krugers that they'd risk this kind of trouble for you? Or do you think the other side won't use you? Have you taken that into account?"
"I didn't have much choice, did I? But things ought to be safe as long as the deal for Jordan's transfer is going to hold up and you keep your hands off Grant. If they put me under probe, they'll hear plenty about the project. I don't think you want outsiders questioning anyone in Rezion right now.
Damned dangerous, young man.
Ari leaned forward and jabbed a finger in his direction.
Did Jordan map this out?
No.
Advise you?
No.
That amazes me. It's going to amaze other people, too. If this goes to court, the Bureau isn't going to believe that he didn't put you up to this. And that's going to weigh against him when it comes to a vote, isn't it? So we'll keep it quiet. You can tell Jordan as much as you want to tell him, and we'll call it stalemate. I won't touch Grant. I won't have the Krugers arrested. Not even assassinated. And yes, I can. I could arrange for an accident for you. Or Jordan. Farm machinery is so dangerous.
He was shocked and frightened. He had never expected her to be so blunt.
I want you to think about something, she said. What you tell your father will either keep things under control or blow everything. I'm perfectly willing to see Jordan get that Fargon post, and I'll tell you exactly what deal I'll strike to unwind this pretty mess you've built for us. Jordan can leave Rezion for Fargon just as soon as there's an office there for him to work in, and when he ships out from Cyteen Station, you'll still be here. You'll arrange for Grant to follow him as soon as the Hope Corridor is open and the Rubin project is well underway. You can take the ship after his, and all of that should keep your father, and you, quiet long enough to serve everything I need. The military won't let Jordan be too noisy. They hate media attention to their projects. Or we can just blow all of this wide right now and let us fight it out in court. I wonder who'd win if we just decided to pull Rubin back to Cyteen and give up the Fargon facility entirely.
I've fallen into a trap, he thought, but how could I have avoided it? What did I do wrong?
Do you agree?
She asked. Yes, so long as you keep your end of it, and I get my transfer back to my father's wing.
Oh, no, that's not part of it. You stay here. What's more, you and I are going to have an ongoing understanding. You know, your father's a very proud man. You know what it would do to him to have to choose whether to go to the Bureau and lose everything over what you've done, or keep his mouth shut and know what you're involved in to keep that assignment for him. Because that's what you've done. You've handed me all the personal and legal missiles I need, if I have to use them. I've got a way to keep your father quiet, an easy way, as it happens, that doesn't involve him getting hurt. And all you've got to do is keep quiet, do your work, and wait it out. You've got exactly the position you bargained for, hostage for his release and his good behavior. So what I want you to do, young man, is go put in an honest day's work, give me the BRX reports by the time your shift's over, and let me see a good job. You do what you like. Call your father. Tell him Grant's gone missing. Tell him as much as you like. I certainly can't stop you. And you come to my residency, about 2100, and you tell me what you've done. Or I'll assume it's gone the other way.
He was still thinking when she finished, still running through all of it, and what she meant, but he knew that. He tried to find all the traps in it. The one he was in, he had no trouble seeing. It was the invitation he had dreaded. It was where everything had been going.
You can go,
she said. He walked out past Florian in the outer lab, out into the hall, out through the security doors and upstairs into the ordinary hallways of Wing 1 operations. Someone passed him on the way to his office and said good morning to him. He realized it half the hall further on and did not even know who it had been. He did not know how he was going to face Jordan. By phone, he thought. He would break the news by phone and meet his father for lunch. And get through it somehow. Jordan would expect him to be distraught. Ari was right. If Jordan got involved in it, everything that was settled became unsettled, and for all that he could figure, Jordan had no hand to play. At best, he thought, go along with it till he could get control of himself enough to think whether telling Jordan the whole story was the thing to do. Whatever the time cost. And that is where I will call it for today. The next installment will be a smidgen shorter, and we'll get to the end of Chapter 2. chapters are behemoths in this one. They kind of did that in Down Below Station as well, as I recall. So yeah. Plotting. Things have gotten rather exciting. The book is more than what I've alluded to it being. A political thriller, a sort of a family intrigue thriller, and a science fiction novel. It's also something else, and we might be finding that out in the next week or so. I do not know my schedule for next week yet. When I do, I will post it in the Discord. That reminds me, I've really got to go to my YouTube and Twitch channels and change the schedule stuff that I have there to say that it is catch as catch can, and I no longer have a consistent schedule. I really have to get around to doing that. I apologize that I haven't done it yet, though if you're listening to this from the future, anything could have happened by then. But if you are listening to this in the future, oh, what was that? Is that an otter? No, I think that's a bit of driftwood. I take it back. It moved really weird, though. Don't mind me, I just have a window overlooking a river. Nope, that was a critter. I think that was an otter. It wasn't a duck. I know it wasn't a duck. Could be an otter. Some of the mammals are out and about this time of year. Anyway, I got a skadoodle. Yeah, this one's pretty dense. It's going to take us a while to get through. I'm realizing that. It's like, oh yeah, no, like 30 pages is like almost 2 hours worth of material. Ah, well. So it is. It is what it is. But I've been looking forward to reading this one aloud on stream for quite some time. Kind of one of the ones I've wanted to read aloud practically from the jump, to be honest. Very, 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 very much what I wanted to do for a while. It might even be one of the books that I've wanted to read since I decided I wanted to read books aloud on here. Really, I think that is fair. You know, it could also be a beaver because those sometimes fanoodle around on my end of the river. It's too deep for them to really do any like dam building, but they do come around. And they are rather cute. They do snag some of the shrubbery and smaller trees. I've seen them fell little twiggy tree things and then drag them up the river. I'm just like, that is so wild. It's very cool. Doesn't happen. Oh yeah, that's an otter. There's no way. Yeah, that's what that is. Very cool river otter. Oh, yeah. That was neat. I'm going to have to keep an eye out for that one. I think they burrow into the banks for, like, little bank of the river hidey holes, if I recall correctly. You don't tend to see them outside too often, but they are around. I've seen them, like, lope across the road occasionally in some of the wetter areas near where I live. Not too often. They don't tend to do that. But it's been known to happen. Oh, very cool. Anyway. I wish I had my binoculars. They're in another room. They're floating around. Like the otter. Floating. Probably going after fish would be my guess. It's a dammed river, so it's kind of it's sort of deep where I'm at, so you can't always. It's because of the way it's set up. It's not actually ideal for fish trying to migrate, because they have difficulty getting up the dam. Even though there's a sluice system set up for them to do it, it's still pretty tough for them to do that. The dam will be going out though. In a couple of years, we finally were able to secure some of the, go through some of the hoops needed for that to occur. So things will be changing. I will not be so much a river with like a water impoundment, but it'll be a more trickly river. Yeah, it's an otter for sure, and he's looking up at me. Hi, little boy. Actually, that's a pretty big critter. That thing's pretty big.
I would not want to tangle with that. Anyway, that's enough wildlife with Frag, I guess, for the moment. We get loons. Lots of loons. So many loons. Usually only in like a couple pairs. The odd bald eagle to show that I'm a real red-blooded American. Lots of ducks. Various ducks. Geese, etc. Anyway, I'll leave you all. Stay safe, stay sane. When I know my schedule, I'll post it in the Discord. And be decent to each other. Until next time, toodaloo!